Hey, rock stars. If you've been on the entrepreneurship journey for a while, you know this feeling. In all the interviews, in all the coaching calls, one truth kept coming up over and over again. Leadership is lonely. Business development is lonely. And entrepreneurship is lonely. You can't just talk to anyone about it. That's why I created the Catalyst Club, a private, values-driven community where you can speak the truth, be your authentic self, and connect with people who understand what you're going through and can actually help. We made it private so you feel safe. We made it affordable so no one gets left out. And we built it on values that matter, like showing up, sharing knowledge, and choosing growth over ego. Inside, you'll find coffee with rock stars for real talk and connection, unplugged Q&A for live coaching and clarity, and Catalyst sessions with world-class experts who light a fire under your next move. We're building the most supportive business community on the internet, and we want you to help us do it. Join us today at kellykennedyofficial.com. We're just getting started.
And she'll say, Gord, people aren't ready to change until they're ready to change.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, as an executive coach, when I'm in the room, I've got two brothers and they're burning the place to the ground and they're about to go out of business and take all those people with them. I have to be the one in there to be able to make a difference and make it very quickly.
The great Mark Cuban once said, business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal. And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 312 of the Business Development Podcast. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to bring you Gordon Sheppard. Gordon is a powerhouse in executive coaching, business advisory, and leadership development. With over 25 years of experience helping leaders sharpen their strategies, optimize operations, and drive real results. As the CEO of Executive Wins, he has built a reputation for turning high-level vision into measurable success through his proven 5-step anatomy of a win framework. Whether it's through one-to-one coaching, corporate training, or meeting facilitation, Gord empowers executives with the insights, tools, and strategies they need to consistently achieve and celebrate their biggest wins. His expertise spans strategic planning, operational performance, leadership development, and corporate communication, making him a trusted advisor to business leaders across North America. A dynamic speaker, trainer, and the host of the Executive Wins podcast, Gord challenges leaders to think bigger, execute smarter, and create long-term success with intention. He doesn't just talk about winning. He shows businesses how to build a system for it. If you're ready to elevate your leadership and grow your business with a proven strategic approach, Gord is the expert who can help you stack your wins and scale on your success. Gord, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show today.
And I'm just going to bring you everywhere I go. I'll just take that introduction all day long. Holy mackerel. Thank you so much. I appreciate the enthusiasm. And it's nice to, it's funny, that's all earned. That's all real, everything you said there. So that's a nice thing to actually hear it all said at one time. And I really appreciate the chance to be here.
The pleasure is mine. We've met before, we've connected. I've been on the Executive Wins podcast, literally probably like a year ago by the time people are listening to this episode. So if you enjoy this conversation and you want more of Gordon Kelly, check out his podcast, Executive Wins with Gordon Sheppard. And you can find another conversation that we're going to have where he grills me, not the other way around.
Well, and I got lucky. It wasn't just grilling. I got to go to school on essentially a masterclass in business development, which was just an outstanding thing. And funny, the story that came up there, which was, the 32 tries to make sure somebody gets through to get the meeting they need with, the persistence that took, and the way you illuminated that over that conversation. Again, anybody that listens to it would just get a great feel for what you do and how you're bringing value to the world too. So it's great to have you on.
It was a great time. I really enjoyed myself. So if there are listeners of this show who are looking to hop on podcasts and want to have, an anatomy of a win, reach out to Gord. And if you got a great story, he might just let you on. Gord, I really enjoyed meeting you, and we actually connected through a mutual friend. And I'm really happy that happened, just because I'm not sure that our paths would have really crossed without that. But I'm really happy it did. And I really like who you are as a person. I like the way that you show up to things. Obviously, we haven't met in person yet, but every interaction I've had with you has been really, really enjoyable. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know you better today, getting to better understand, who is Gordon Sheppard? How did you end up this massive executive coach helping businesses around the world? Looking forward to it. Take me back. Were you always an entrepreneur at heart? Did you think this was going to be your path? Take me back to, the beginning. Who is Gordon Sheppard?
Do you know what was fun? I was getting ready for this, and those little you go to the guidance counselor and you do those little surveys about what do you want to do in life. So I'm 17 or whatever, filling that thing in, and the results came back and it said, "Don't be a nurse."
Well, you succeeded at that.
I would be a horrible nurse because I would just be like, it's broken leg, get the cast off, get out the door. But it said, do be a coach. And so I have sort of an urge from those early days to coach, help in whatever way possible. Really good for professional use, not recommended for parenting in early childhood years. I've got 23 and 21-year-olds who are going to be recovering from that with their therapists for a long time. That urge to help has always been there. And the joy that I get is when I help people get the ahas and do the behavioral change in short amounts of time. That's the differentiator for me. I've got one of my favorite stories to talk about sort of who I am and what I'm about is my mother-in-law, who's outstanding. She's 81 years old. She's in Mexico right now, like an author seminar thing, doing cool things, keeping herself in great shape. She's wonderful to talk to, retired therapist. And she'll say, Gord, people aren't ready to change until they're ready to change.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, as an executive coach, when I'm in the room, I've got two brothers and they're burning the place to the ground and they're about to go out of business and take all those people with them. I have to be the one in there to be able to make a difference and make it very quickly. And so that's where I get sort of my attitude from, in the sense of being very focused on making organizations successful. So when I say the aha moments, I really enjoy them, but I also have developed a skill set over years for difficult conversations. And that's a specialty of mine in given situations. Facilitation is really fun. I do big stakeholder meetings and small ones or whatever. But those ideas around innovation, whether it's innovation or strategy or whatever, there's always some moments where we're going to get potentially our backs up or whatever. And consistently over time, I get feedback that I create psychologically safe rooms to be in. I do that in one-on-ones. I do that with groups of people, but that's taken time. I say that easily now, but I've fallen down in trying to get there or whatever. But I really love bringing that to that moment now. So we're all the way back to that high school guidance counselor kind of moment of be a coach. It's in me to coach. And I know that's a lane that I play in quite well. I'm often describe myself too as the options guy for the leaders. I'm not there to necessarily answer because I've had a guy say, 33 years in drilling, say, don't tell me about drilling. I said, I don't know anything about drilling, but I do know about organizations. Yeah. And I do know about structure and those things and how to put them together, and happy to explain sort of how I arrived there from that moment. But there's that high school guidance counselor thing. I'm taking you on the journey then. I'll take you all the way. And so that gets me out of high school, and I headed off to Queen's University in Ontario and did a drama degree, funny enough. And so when I did that, I thought, well, I'd come out to, be a director in theater or television, that kind of thing. When I did that, this is that's graduating in 89. So I'll put that right there. I'm 1967, proud to say it, born and bred on that 100th anniversary for Canada. The drama degree comes out. I did a year of acting school in New York City. And that was really cool because it's all human behavior. It's all sort of soaked in there. Now, I certainly didn't have the focus that I have now, and I'll tell you how I kind of got here. I ended up working in the television business for probably from those early 90s into the 2012 was my last chance in TV. So worked for TV Ontario in Ontario, did a variety of sort of, up the ladder skills there. My wife works in theater. We got married in 97. So we've been married, whatever that is, 28 years this year, I guess. Then we get into, I followed her theater career and we ended up in Thunder Bay, which is a crazy thing to go to a small market, but she worked at a theater there. I ended up working at CBC Radio. So it was nice I'd been doing work visually in the television business in the 90s and then got to do stuff for the ear, which was really cool, being reporter and a switcher and doing that kind of stuff. And we got out here to Alberta because she worked at the Fringe Festival and since then has worked at all kinds of different theaters around town, currently works at Catalyst Theater. She, the opportunity then to work in TV at Access Television came up and I did what I call my corporate stretch in there when I worked full-time for them as a producer, produced all kinds of videos, corporate videos, putting things together. And then my last sort of role there when things got bought out and eventually we were owned by Rogers was as the manager of creative services and marketing for City TV here in Edmonton.
Wow.
When I look at the through line of what's in there, and then sorry, why did I get to this moment in time? TV business is going like this, Blockbuster's going like this, Netflix is going like this, TV revenues dried up. And so I got packed out in 2012 and the TV business was fun up until about 2005-ish. And then I kind of hung in there for those other years, but it's been a very dwindling business just based on revenues. 2009, I don't know if I recommend it or not, went back, did an MBA. And did that part-time at the University of Alberta and got sparked. The natural progression for me would have been to continue in communications marketing at sort of executive type level. There was a guy who taught a class and he drew the org structure up on the board. And it was a lightning rod moment for me to go, wait a second. Oh, and when you go in and you help leaders learn how to make their organizations better. And that's tying me all the way back to that moment in the guidance counselor's office, because instead of it being theater or even television, this now takes it into a real world impact. And so 2012, the shingle got hung out. I went through those early suffering entrepreneur years of really not knowing a lot. I wish I'd known you around those days for business development because I was bad at it for sure and sort of fumbled through getting going. And then those probably, I'd say around, if you get that 16, 17 time catching a bit of energy in there for, the independent work, COVID was not fun as an independent, I can tell you for sure. But these last 4 or 5 years now, just out of COVID and whatever, very consistent. And then that ability to help as many people, like you said, around the world as possible has been a real joy. So all of that has come to the fruition now for me saying, I take it all and package it together. And my goal is to help leaders get the information and inspiration that they need to strengthen themselves so they can strengthen their teams, their organization, and ultimately serve their clients and community at the highest possible level. And that's the biggest impact that I can have. So having consolidated now in the Executive Wins brand, everything to be with leadership teams. That's where I can make the impact. It's where I can make the big difference. And it's really fun to go to work.
My gosh, like what a career transition, hey? That is an incredible journey, Gordon. Every once in a while, we get some pretty incredible journeys on here, and that is definitely one of them. To go from essentially media through your MBA to now being an executive coach and doing that for the last 13 years. 13 years, that's friggin' incredible. Like, most businesses don't get that far. So congratulations on your success. And now you're kind of stepping into the podcasting space too and sharing that message far and wide, which is a lot of fun. So it's really what's next. The sky is the limit for you.
Well, the biggest thing for me is I think if if someone dropped $1 billion on my head, I would just simply go to work every day in the nonprofit space and I would bulletproof nonprofit organizations. I've been lucky. I've probably worked with north of 15 nonprofits and had really good luck with helping them fill in gaps that they needed filled and supporting leaders in those areas, which has flowed through to the end users and strengthened those organizations. So that's a real joy. But funny enough, I say nonprofit, I just mean organizations in general, because whether it's a large organization, I got really lucky, got to work for a resort company one time and we did
That's awesome.
2-day innovation for their commercial team down in Mexico at a resort. It was really like one of those moments where you're just like, you can't believe the call is real, but suddenly you're on a plane and you're there and you snuck your wife on for the 7-day trip because they were like, well, why don't you take a room for a week? And we're like, okay, we'll do that. And, so I'm in a room like that and I've got the commercial team for a company that makes an enterprise level of revenue. And I'm leading those people, but then I'm down in a nonprofit setting and I'm helping, a little nonprofit with their board, or I'm helping, people in the home building services area to make their companies better. It's been nice to get a wide variety of exposure. And in the one-on-one coaching, there are just commonalities that come up over and over again. So I feel fortunate to have been in so many different settings with men and women
Yeah.
where they're like, why do you already know what's wrong? And I'm like, it's because I've heard the conversations before. And again, I'm there to expedite. I'm not there to bill. I'm there to expedite the situation so that they can get themselves into a stronger position as quickly as possible, again, to strengthen their organizations. So that's the real through line that's super clear now. And it's nice too when I have that organizational foundation approach, because all the heavy lifting that needs to be done, and I'm talking about exits, hiring, difficult conversations, talking about revenue shifts, talking about whatever, anticipating market trends and political changes, whatever those things are that come up in these facilitated moments. A lot of it's quite heavy lifting. And again, we have to move as quickly as possible. The leaders are equipped the way that they're equipped. They're very good often at their main thing and earning revenue. There's something in there that's a combo. But it's very difficult for them to have filled in all the other areas because not everyone's got time to go to the MBA. Not everyone's got time to do all of that extra work around the way. So it's a joy for me to fill that in. And when I say I back that up foundationally, underneath the anatomy of a win, which is a 5-part system where we talk about the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results in any conversation, underneath there is what I call the executive planning system. And that's a 650-page document at this point of prompts that allows me, if I spend a year sort of off and on in the office with an organization, which I've done before, we can make sure that every area of your business is rounded out and checked off at least, so that you've got a plan forward in every aspect of your business. I'm not going to claim to be an HR person or an IT person, but I can claim to help you have the right questions for when you go to speak with them. So a lot of leaders aren't equipped just even in that basic way. And then because I'm guarding the whole organization, it's always feeding back to drive the strategy and the vision, which hopefully is as clear as can be. So if I'm there. So often say I'm like Yoda on the shoulder of the leader, that little voice in their ear.
Everybody needs a Yoda. And I really love that you touched on the fact that you run into the same challenges over and over again. I do too, right? Like in business development, the funny thing is that especially when I'm sitting down and I'm talking with companies, they'll always feel like, Kelly, I'm in this very unique situation, right? But the funny thing is, and for better or for worse, I think for a lot of people, there's hope in this. And the hope is that your challenge is probably not that unique. There's a really good chance that if you're in business and you're struggling with something, somebody else has struggled with the same thing, if not thousands of people. And I say that in business development because almost every time I'm in a room talking about business development, the challenges they have are the same challenges that I have run into over and over and over again. And it's simply, you just don't know what you don't know. Let me talk about that. Literally today, I had a I don't know what I don't know moment. And I had somebody reach out to me over LinkedIn and just say, hey, like your LinkedIn, it's set up really well, but you're missing some stuff. Like, did you know that you could be adding a services section to like over and above your featured section? I'm like, what? There's a services section? So it's like, dude, I've been using LinkedIn heavy for 5 years and I didn't realize that I could add services to my page, which I did immediately. And I was like, oh, well, that's obvious. Like, why didn't I think of that? Well, I didn't think of it because I don't know what I don't know. And I run into those things all the time. And Gordon, a question I'm constantly asking myself is, what do I not know right now that could make all the difference in my business? And unfortunately, the answer to that, it almost takes somebody like you to reach out and say, Kelly, this is the thing, right? It takes somebody like that LinkedIn message to reach out and say, did you know this? Another one like that would be that your LinkedIn has a recommendation section. Most people have no idea your LinkedIn has a recommendation section, but you can go in and ask for recommendations. And I found that out about, 6-8 months ago, and we have like 70 recommendations on our LinkedIns now, right? But once again, you don't know what you don't know until somebody points it out. And so you having such broad experience, right? When you're working with so many different industries, you've likely come across the challenge once before, and that little bit of information is worth every penny.
I agree, and it can be that very thing. Like if I spend an hour with a senior leader, sometimes we're kind of getting through a bunch of stuff that's like, I got it. But there'll be that 1 or 2 moments where that's the moment of integration. That's the moment where they kind of carry things forward. And the thing that I'm proud of underneath the work that I do is I have a structured checklist. Like it's not a random conversation, and it's not like I hope you know this. It's that piece of knowing that I'm checking the boxes as we go, and I'm thinking about their entire organization. I'm guarding the whole place is what I'm trying to do. Certainly in the theme of what I'm trying to do. The other piece that I love about your story about getting being open to receiving information. There's a lot of people that aren't. And so there's got to be a sliver of humility in the situation before I get into any sort of coaching situation where they have to be coachable. because I've tried that sort of hit your head against the wall with folks, and I don't mean to come across, I'm often very straightforward in style, and I'm trying to learn. That's one of my things I'm trying to learn. But it's straightforward to the point of if I can't work with the person, it's kind of pre-vetting them to say, are you ready to be coachable? Are you ready to move? And then the speed that they need to move at, depending on the pain points they have in their world. If it's a revenue issue, if it's a personal issue, whatever those things are, if you're hiring Gord, it's to move at the pace that you want to move at to help you reach your goals ultimately. So yeah, it's really a valuable thing. And I always say too, it's not just me as a coach in a given situation. I think that leaders need a combination of paid and unpaid. I say that very, very clearly. One of the biases that you can get into if you rely too heavily on one advisor is they may be taking you in the wrong direction. And there's a Harvard Business article, I don't have it in front of me right now, but this idea of someone relied too much on their advisor and the company starts to go sideways. So I think you need someone to check and say, well, did Gord said this, and it can't be your spouse, but it has to be someone in a circle of reliable people. And I think you need, again, paid and unpaid. What I hear back from leaders, though, is like, well, I'm too busy to get those unpaid relationships done. And I say, no, you're not. You have to be able to go and get at least 2 or 3, and you can pick what areas you want to kind of get them to work on. But this idea of reaching out and having somebody an hour a month in that area that you want to work on, again, paid or unpaid, the paid person, because they're focused, someone like me, gives you a chance to I help you quarterback the whole thing. I can put it all together. And that's the value, I think, in a strong executive coach. The other people will need to be there for those different reasons. It could be for a personal relationship. I know one senior leader who's finally Gord, I finally got the trainer. I went to the gym. I was never going to go on my own, so I could take care of myself. Because again, we're often into these 360 conversations with people as well. But I love that you had the humility to know that you could be open to a suggestion. And once that's there, I think help is unlimited. And it's funny, having met people with super high wealth, I mean, in the hundreds of millions of dollars, they sound like you. Mm-hmm. They're open to suggestion. So it's not a revenue thing. It really is a sort of ego. And can you be open? And when you are open, you just have way more opportunity.
Quick pause here, and thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. I want to recognize Hyperfab, a Canadian precision fabrication company built by the team behind Hypervac Technologies, supporting projects in both Canada and the United States. They focus on high-quality sheet metal, fast turnaround, and solving complex fabrication challenges when it matters most. Hyperfab is proud to be our title sponsor for 2026. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. I like to use the terminology, no matter how much of an expert you were only an expert until yesterday. And today and tomorrow are brand new days. And I live my life like that. Because you know what? Even in business development, yeah, I know a lot about business development, but the field changes every single day. And if I don't keep up with it, I'm going to be behind. So it doesn't matter how much of an expert you are. You have to continue to work on yourself, and you have to continue to be open to the fact that you don't have every single answer. There's probably another answer out there you don't know.
And absolutely. And that ability to then say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or can you check that? And that it's the same thing as your doctor's not responsible for your health. The coach is going to be there to coach, but that's what they're there for. They're not there to solve your problem. If I was there to solve the problem, I'd apply for a job in your company and I could work there. That's not sort of the role, I think, that the coach plays.
Run me through that. I want to spend a little bit of time with that on the executive side, because, when you're talking about high-level organizational coaching, which is essentially what you're doing, what is the difference between that per se and essentially consulting to make a recommendation? How do you help them versus tell them what to do?
Yeah, it always, so for me, it ends up being a combination of both. So one of the things I've heard is this difference between there's mentorship versus coaching. And there could be a couple camps around that. And I'm not in either camp, because it's not that I never advise, but because there's certain moments, for example, I'll hear this frequently. Why won't that person who's underneath me do what I want them to do? That comes up all the time for leaders. They're frustrated, and often they get answers they don't want to hear. I'm like, well, you haven't spent enough time with that person, or you know what I mean? They just bug you because they look like your mother or something. There's things that come up around that type of, internal voice.
Yeah.
And if they can't if they can't sort of be open to that level of advice, and that's straight up, and then, because then in that case, it might be a coach moment where they're avoiding a difficult conversation, as an example. So that would be a very direct one. The other one's around, where do you take your company in the future? I would provide analysis for and help, depending on what needed to be coordinated. I'm often actually in situations where I'll be, again, helping the leader to quarterback the situation, and they might be interacting with HR. They might be hiring somebody. I've had moments where I'm in between them and the website provider, this kind of thing. And it's because the leaders don't have, again, a full rounded skill set to necessarily deal with all the different vendors that they deal with. So in those cases, it becomes recommendations. So it's a bit of both around what that is. And I wouldn't claim to be an expert in technical often. My area is leadership development, process improvement. That's sort of where I sort of spend my time, and strategy. Like that's sort of my place to play. And then when it gets into those heavy technical ones around those specific recommendations, it's trying to get them all the alternatives that they need. So it's nice to know, say, multiple HR strong referrals to say, well, here's a few you can vet, but you vet them out and then you find out the best one for you. But ultimately, they've got to run their business, I think, from their perspective. Yeah.
I know for me, when people reach out to me for business development coaching, it's not because they're doing great. It's because they're really struggling, or they're finding that their teams are not having effective process, or they're not getting the results they want, or they're not hitting their revenue goals. Usually it's like a, oh shit, we need help moment. Are you finding, Gordon, that when executives are reaching out to you that they're in that moment, or are they getting ahead of the problem?
If you're lucky, they're getting ahead of the problem. And those are my favorites because they're the Olympic athletes and they're tweaking. And that's a great place to be because, all they want to do is make things better. Frequently, they're in a crisis scenario, just exactly like you said. And they're often reaching out too late, especially on that lost revenue side or where they've gotten so far down the rabbit hole. And then you're coming in with very heavy recommendations. I had one case where CRA was about to shut the place down because of some misdealings. I worked with the external accountant to sort of get that under, in control, but they couldn't emotionally control themselves. Because one of the things we said to them was, don't call CRA. We're using the accountant's reputation to keep you alive. Mm-hmm. Don't call CRA. And then someone called CRA, and suddenly that thing was off the rails, and a business went under because they weren't in a moment where they were going to listen to the given situation. And I used to think that I could save everybody. I don't know if you think you can save everybody, but this thing, I used to think I could save every person who walked through the door. And that's just not true. And I'll go back to your piece about you're an expert up until yesterday. I used to think I could save everybody till yesterday. Now it has to be that sort of combo of feeling out and being honest about people and then seeing what actions they take after we meet. Yeah. If they're not taking action, then it's not happening. And then you just say, well, I'm not the right person for you at this time. But when they do take action and then you get to the next hour and working with them. And in one case, I had spent 500 hours with one company and we took them from swearing at each other in the hallways and not having any processes and the leadership being very poor to developing and delivering a strategy, to getting one of my favorite compliments, which was thanks for bringing the laughter back into the hallways. That can be the level of impact that I've made in the past. And I really enjoy those ones, but it's not like 100% of the time. It's all based on this real human part of, do they have the humility and ability to take the advice and take action?
Well, that is the downside, right? Is that no matter what we say or what we do, if our students don't take action, we can't help them because we can lead them to water, but we can't make the calls for them. We can't do, update our LinkedIn's or do the things we need to do to achieve growth. So you're absolutely right. And actually, I have ran into that a couple of times, not a lot. I think most people, by the time they're paying for coaching, that dollar and cents amount is like, okay, maybe I should actually do some of the stuff they're suggesting. But I have actually had it happen once where we got through the program. But honestly, I think I felt bad as a coach in that moment because they didn't do what they needed to do and didn't get the results. But I kind of struggled with that in the fact of, I asked myself after, could I have done that better? Could I have said something different to have gotten better results from that person? The answer obviously is no. There's nothing I really could have done, but you do find that way. And, I want to make sure that wherever we're at, we're making a massive impact, not even a small impact or a medium impact. I want to make a massive impact everywhere I go. And when I'm not successful in that, I do sometimes struggle with it. And I'm a fairly new coach. You've been in this game a long time. I've only been coaching for a year and a half. So I'm new to the game. So when I do have something like that happen, and like I said, it's happened only once, but I did struggle with that. And I do ask you for advice for me. How do you handle that situation better without taking it so hard?
I wish I didn't have the test case. And just like you said, that experience. I had one test case where I was in it hour by hour, going through quite a significant engagement and didn't step back to realize that who was I dealing with. So I didn't do that in the moment. Like you said, you had a program, you were delivering your program. In my case, I was trying to deliver strategic advice in a structured way, and were they absorbing it and could they take it in? And in retrospect, about a third of the way through, I should have just hit the brakes and went, hey, this isn't working. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And their behavior was pretty erratic. And so they weren't actually going to do those things. And that's more about me than I realized afterwards wanting to be the savior in a sense. And that's my own thing I had to work out. And that's nice for future people because now I don't need to waste time or sort of deliver those things. So I think that urge to help, I would share with you in terms of what that wants to be. But your urge to help is not the point for them, right?
Yeah.
It's the results, right? They need the results, whatever those results are going to be. And that's what it is. And that's a tough one to swallow for a helper. And, if you look back at whatever your own personality or whatever mentorship you've had in the past, the type of person that you are. And that's why you're in it, right? To help people and make things go forward in that structured way and make it, like you said, that massive impact. But it's not going to happen every time. And I wish it was. I really wish it was because I think so many folks need it. But again, that combo of, and I say a sliver of humility. It's not that they can't be, but just somewhere in there where there's a crack, something to get in there and earn trust quickly to then be able to say, okay, yeah, I can take this in. And the other tough part on the clients is I always say, careful who you pick to coach you because you're going to tell them your whole story. And it's exhausting for them to have to retell the story if they have to get a new one. So it's got that sort of early vetting up front of like getting right fit is really important.
I really love that we're chatting about this right now because, I talk to a lot of coaches, but we don't typically talk about the times it doesn't work out. Right? I would argue this is the very first time that I've talked with a coach and we're talking about the time it didn't work out. So I think it's really candid. I think it's really important. This is an important conversation because I know we have lots of people who are coaching, listening to us right now, growing their own coaching businesses. And one of the things I want to chat with you is, I've never had somebody tell me that it is okay to end a program. You're the very first person I've ever talked to who has said it's okay. Like you're essentially giving us permission to pull the plug if it's not working. And I want to spend a little bit of time with that because pulling the plug it feels like admitting defeat. It feels like failure on our part. How can we overcome that feeling? Or for instance, I had that one client that we got through it. I knew by the end that they probably weren't going to do the work. They'd already paid for the program. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, should I have just pulled the plug and just been like, sorry, this isn't working? We did, like I said, get through the program, but I wanted more from it for them.
I think a lot of it is looking at, well, there's the tough part if you're talking about the consultants that are listening is they're revenue hungry. So you have to check that. Like if you know what I mean? Like that thing of being overly hungry for the dollars. And I remember meeting a consultant years ago when I was learning and they talked about, they said, I should fire this client because I'm not really providing any value, but they've got me on a retainer. And I wanted to, instinctively, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? Why wouldn't it just end at the point it's supposed to end? But now that's me philosophically. So I'm just there to transfer knowledge as quickly as I can and get out the door. That's what I hope to do. Whether it's an hour, 500 hours, whatever that is, the hope is, again, if I wanted work there, and that sort of maybe lets me kind of sleep at night for the perspective that I take into things.
Yeah.
That piece around, can you say no for their benefit and yours? For me, it comes back to a values-based kind of decision of like, well, if I'm not providing value at this moment, it is time to say no because I'm not the right fit. And funny enough, someone was kicking the tires with me the other day and I said, oh, well, that's interesting. And they weren't sure and they were talking about things and whatever. I said, well, you should kick the tires with a few people because once you pick somebody where you're going to get into this intimate, it's such an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
You shouldn't take that lightly when you sort of go into it. So I would hope that you should have the ability to say no. Admitting failure, that's a funny thing. It's real trendy right now to go Brene Brown and be vulnerable about the whole thing around, yeah, you know what, I mess up too, but it's inevitable, I think, in terms of what's happening. Because the other part about coaching that's difficult is you just have limited information. You have to just unless you can spend 100 hours with them and really get to fully understand every aspect of what they're doing, that's very rare, right? Yeah. A lot of times for me, I'll come in on a small engagement. I'm there for half a day. We're doing sort of training that leads to little bits and fits here and there. But it's tough because you're not getting the full context either. And I don't know that you could ever pretend to have the full context. You have your toolkit, you can have your instincts and kind of what you know. So I would hope that people can say no. But I walk on the poor road that's been laid out by other people where they've hung on too long and there's just been poor results.
Mm-hmm.
I've frequently like, oh, what's the difference about you? Like, aren't you like these negative things? And I'm like, no, I'm not. But they don't know that because they've had a bad experience with somebody. So yeah. And the ones I can't stand, there's different areas of consulting. And I remember someone going to a startup with a marketing plan and just unabashedly saying, oh yeah, it's $30,000 and we'll get you your logo. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They have no money. Like they have $0 and you've just asked a bootstrapped operation. So that's an inappropriate thing that has everything to do with the consultant wanting to get paid on 1990s dollars when money was very different to now where I think it has to be a value provided scenario because there's just so many alternatives out there as well.
Well, and that's just it. And when I'm doing consulting, if I can't make the money or save the money, I don't make sense. Like, that's it. Like, that's how I measure whether or not it makes sense or not. It's like, if I can't either make you money or help you achieve the revenue goal you're after or save you money somewhere, I don't make sense because you're right. Like any consulting service, it's quite expensive. So if it's not providing value, if it's not putting money back in your pocket or saving you money one way or another, it probably doesn't make sense to do in your business.
Well, and then there's also them getting to know you as well in this process, which is like for me, I transform leaders' lives. Like if I spend an hour with you, I'll make a dent. I've just done it so consistently that, and I'm super excited about that. It can be pretty impactful. Like it can be daunting for people to have somebody get that honest that quickly to move the needle. But it's just the nature of the way that I do things because if I'm going to get paid, it wants to provide those values. And the impacts that I'm having, again, are changing whole cultures, massively improving processes, putting them on a strategic path that they never knew they were going to be on, having conversations they weren't going to have with each other because I can be the objective outsider, not in the family, able to get them to have those conversations. So again, massive impacts around either profit driving or, again, process or personal satisfaction, which makes hopefully the coaching kind of worthwhile for them. But there's a bit of discovery on their part too, because they actually don't know often what coaching is. And so there's sort of that feeling each other out as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a good segue to just chat about it. You know, like, let's say that I'm a medium-sized company. We're doing, let's call it $10 million a year in revenue, but we're struggling to grow. We're just not, we're maintaining, but we're just not doing it. Maybe we have organizational challenges inside. Maybe our processes are not right. Maybe our organization structure is messed up. You know nothing aside from the conversation, for instance, we might have had quickly when we were talking about bringing you on. Run us through it. Like, let's do a hypothetical company. What does it look like when you come in and you start evaluating a company?
A lot of it where I start with is the leaders themselves. So it depends on what they're ready to absorb. Because if I walk in with a 600-page document and say we're going to fill it out today, their poor eyes just roll in the back of their head and they just die a slow death, right? Yeah. So initially they're sort of leveling out where are we at. And if it's just something simple like I had one woman say, I want my website to be better. I'm not a web guy, but I mean, I was in there to coach her.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, why isn't your web provider, why isn't that happening? Well, then you find out that they are not good at having a tough conversation. And then you find out they aren't good at asking for things that they deserve. But in the meantime, she's got clients on the client side who are seeing her website. So immediately we're into, so often there's a little thread in there that I can start to pull on if I can get started with whatever that thread is. And when I say that thing about why won't the people that report to me do what I want them to do, that's a very frequent one. And it's a gift for me because I'll be like, oh, great. Why not? And then pretty quickly I'm getting a mirror out and putting it right up to them because no one ever has in the given situation. So starting with the leaders, if I was a typical starting place for me, and I don't have my dashboard in front of us right now to share the screen, but again, if I'm thinking about your whole business in these 5 pillars, what is the strategy, the work plan, people, operations, and results? What I do is I dig into the people side very quickly, usually in the upfront conversation, and I'll just do 2 things. One, I'll say, what is your current organization structure in your $10 million company? And we just draw it out on the whiteboard. Yep. And then we leave some whiteboard space, say, what do you want it to be in 3 years or 2 years or 1 year? So what is the future state of what that looks like? And then currently in your organization, what are the roles and responsibilities under each person? And I can tell you, having dealt with $10 million and $1 billion organizations, the senior leaders have lost touch with what's happening in their organization. They just don't have the time to know that everybody isn't, again, doing kind of what they're supposed to be doing. Now, it really bugs them when you start to reveal this. I had a person leading a VP in an institution leading 180 people. And I was like, I was talking to some of the people at the lower levels and they're doing this. He's like, why are they doing that? And I'm like, well, the real reason is because you weren't paying enough attention to them. What do you want to do about it? And then that gives them that option to sort of start to dig back in and get that going and realign it or not, depending on what needs to be done. So this $10 million organization, we start in at where are they at on their leadership side, if they're doing well or not, depending on what's happening. Then we get into the structure and roles and responsibilities. Well, that just opens up a big can of worms because that who does what, because it's not in the job descriptions. The job descriptions are essentially useless. I don't mean to rag on the HR people. It's just saying they're not representative of the current state of what's happening. So now you get into saying, well, wait a second. So what do you do in your daily? And I can't tell you how many times I've had a blank sheet of paper in front of me and people don't know how to time manage. And I'm like, oh, okay, you don't know how to. So then we write down all the things they need to do and we rank them. And suddenly it's the first time when they've started to prioritize their day. We want to get them out of that. The typical is working in your business, working on your business. We want to get them to work, the senior guys to be working on their business. So that structure and roles and responsibilities goes together pretty quickly. Depending on if they are into strategic planning or not, some are and some aren't. Some are just revenue driven and they make the money and that's fine. If they want to get to the vision, mission, values, and those are real, a lot of times lip service gets paid to those things. And I'll gauge what's happening. Like if they're not going to get that vision statement rolling off of everybody's tongue across the organization, then I don't spend a lot of time there. What I'm really interested in for me is moving to their goals and what are the objectives that drive those goals. If they want to go from 10 million to 20 million, what does that pathway look like? And what do we need to talk through? And what can be absorbed mentally for them to actually stage that out? And I'm in the high complexity game at this moment in time. And I don't mean to make this podcast last for 10 hours because I would just simply pull the ripcord and start talking straight because we dig in then at that point to say, okay, if we're doing that, then what are the, all the areas that we need to talk to? How do we pull all that together? And then we start working through those goals and objectives and making that happen. And then underneath there in that operational component, I just want to know that they know it's happening. So quality assurance is an example of an area that I don't know a ton about, but for organizations, say, that do bids, a $10 million company that's looking to do a bid with a massive company, they need to know a lot about quality assurance. And I know enough to know that they need to know. Yeah. And I just want them to check the boxes that I know they need to know. But sometimes the senior leaders don't, like we said, we don't know what we don't know. And then I'm looking for every major area of their business. What don't they know about accounting that they need to know? What don't they know about IT? What don't they know? And IT is in every conversation, whether they like it or not. And I'm like, get them to the table because they've got to be there, like those types of things. So then again, you can hear the complexity and now that spreads into many, many hours for saying, okay, we had the $10 million company. You said in the first meeting, you're going to 20. What does that look like? What does that look like for you? How do we kind of work that out? And then I'm getting in at a high level and then we can pull the threads on all the different things that we're doing there. All the way along, I'm always trying to knowledge transfer. I want a knowledge transfer so that they take over the information. Because again, if they wanted me to do those things, I would work in their company. Yeah. But ideally what we're doing is knowledge transfer, and they get that. They take that on. It strengthens them as leaders. And then in their leadership team, they round out who does what in an honest way with an open, communication with each other. Now we're off to the races because we know that they're going to work towards building out essentially, again, if I call it the executive planning system, they will have a document that's like an organization plan, which is bigger to me than a strategic plan because it's everything. And then if they've got that, they can visit that on an annual basis, prioritize it, and look at the key things they need to do, and then also ignore the things they can't do. And so, they're often very hopeful, say, in the area of marketing, but they're not ready to do it, so they often don't have a budget for it anyway. So then we don't need to say that that's important if they can't actually get to it. So I don't mean to get into the full complexity, but if I had that $10 million company with those leaders, I'm starting in at them. I'm looking at roles, responsibilities, and structure, and that gets the ball rolling into saying, how far do we need to go for where you're at? And then can I knowledge transfer, hopefully within 6 months to a year over sort of meetings, with frequency around 2-4 times a month, depending on what's going on. And then they can have all that knowledge to take forward themselves.
Wow. That was a lot more than I thought you were going to say. Just in general, it's very complex, right? The thing I like about it, though, is that you're ultimately creating a roadmap, right? You're not just saying you need to change. You're saying, hey, let's look at everything. Let's create a genuine, actionable plan. I think there's a lot of people that come in and give advice, but what they fail to do is give the action plan, right? And if you can give a full action plan on how you're going to accomplish those goals, the things that need to happen, people are really good at making things happen when they can see it.
I agree. And it's amazing what those little moments are. So like a favorite coaching question I'll say is, and I'll just ask you, who do you listen to?
Like in the company or like on podcasts?
You're the CEO of your own deal.
That's right.
Who do you listen to?
You know what? I bounce a lot of ideas off of mentors and a mentor group that I have of other business owners who have accomplished far more than I. And they tend to have,
I'm so glad. The typical answer is nobody.
Okay.
Especially the owner operators as an example. And Alberta as an example is full of these folks they're just millionaires standing in line at Tim Hortons or whatever. They've built these businesses up over 3 and 4 decades or whatever it is, and they are genius at their thing, but they don't have any advice. And I'm a big fan of the full life cycle of everything. Like, so I'm like organization all the way from here to either selling it or passing it on to that next generation. I've got that sort of through line in mind. So that who do you listen to is one of my favorite ones. The other one is, I love as a coaching question is status quo an option?
Yeah.
And that's a great one because it'll get people to react. Because often they'll say, well, no, I want my $10 million company to be 20 million. I'm like, great. But what if you just keep doing what you're doing and I can just leave? And that challenges them to either get in the game and kind of dig in or not, depending on where they're at. So those are typical ones that kind of get the ball rolling quite well. Yeah. And they'll then start to find themselves sharpening very quickly into where they need to go.
That's a really great question. That has never come up, not in 300 plus episodes. Asking yourself if status quo is an option. I want everybody listening right now to ask themselves if status quo is an option. Because that's a great question.
And then look at what you do after you ask yourself. Because typically we've got patterns, right? So if you're going to go do your pattern, then you know that it is an option.
Yeah.
The people pay a lot of lip service to it not being an option. They'll read a book, they'll do a thing. But are they going to actually kind of get at it? And that's a very good baseline question to find out, okay, then what do you actually need to do next?
And it doesn't have to be a big leap. I think that's what people are always looking for. What is the big thing I can do? And I would argue, don't look for the big thing you can do. Look for the little things you can do every single day, week, month, and year, because little things turn into an elephant over a year.
Absolutely. And if they can sort of what is the action that they can take? And again, who can they be accountable to get it done? Hopefully themselves. But again, if they need that outside accountability, The other one I love asking is, how do things get done around here? Yeah. And that's a great one because you just start to go, oh, you actually, you do this and you do that and this is the way it is. Then I don't need to be prescriptive or coming from a book to say, we're going to put this model in place. It's very organic to then say, oh, okay, so this is where you're at in leadership. You got a plus column, you got a minus column. Let's sort of see that. Okay, that's where we're at. That's great. We understand the status quo. Good. And now where are we going from there? So it's really nice to have that sort of experience to know when to hit those simplified moments to allow that to occur. The other one that was a real gift a couple of years ago, a woman named Susan Scott wrote a book called Fierce Conversations. And she says, one of the key learnings in there is to let the silence do the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know. I always say when I got good at business development, Gordon, was when I learned how to shut up. When I literally stopped talking and stopped trying to sell and I just started to listen and ask good questions, and it changed everything. And I almost hate to admit it, man, for probably 2 years, I was really bad at business development because what I kept telling myself was I have to sell, I have to talk, I have to fill the space. And it was completely wrong. It was when I kind of realized, okay, no, you need to understand the situation. You need to better understand the challenge to see if you're even a fit. I was trying to sell most of the time before I even knew that my product was a fit for these people. It's like, understand the challenge before you start to provide the solution.
Congratulations. I mean, that's a great gift to yourself, right? In all your relationships, you'll be able to use that. But that ability to zip it. My mom used to do this one with me. She'd go, which meant zip it and throw away the key in her Scottish sort of humor. But I love that one. And when you say that, what's that quick win that you can get? When I talk about that one, there's a workshop I teach about effective meetings to a lot of senior teams. And it's that silence is that people need to practice. So you actually have to go and just see what it feels like. Because depending on your personality, that's very easy for you. I know for me as a talker, it's very difficult to do that. So that physiological ability to go and stop and just take people in can be very powerful. And again, something you put in your leadership kind of toolkit.
And actually, even strategic pauses when you're communicating are also incredibly powerful. There's a lot of power in silence, and people don't realize that. But if you can learn how to leverage it, it'll change the way you communicate.
Absolutely. And so what's nice is just sharing tricks of the trade in terms of coaching, little phrases or tweaks that you pick up along the way. And hopefully it demonstrates the hours, the 10,000 hours Malcolm Gladwell made me put in to get good at this, where you can arrive at those eloquent solutions. Like that thing of like, oh, I talked to Kelly and he just said if I patiently and persistently and respectfully stay in touch with people, it will work out. And I didn't believe him. And then he showed me the proof and then we did it. Like that's an eloquent solution to, I'm sure, what took you a long time to define into something that it would have taken time to get to that eloquence.
It's experience and consistency over time, right? If you get, it's just like you can walk into an organization and you have a 99% chance of being able to make a big impact, 100% chance, as you mentioned. If you get me an hour, I'll change something in you, right? You can only do that because you've had so much experience and you've shown over and over again that it just works. And business development for me was the same thing. With that much time dedicated to doing the same thing over and over and over again, you just got to a point where you're like, yeah, if I do this, I'm going to get this result at least over this period of time.
And it was fun to talk to you about your thing because I don't believe it and I want it right now. That's that other piece right now. I want this to be solved right now. And we run into that, I'm sure anybody in the coaching space, because somebody wants that immediate pain point taken away.
Yeah.
And some of them can be pretty straightforward, but the ones where I'm facilitating the very difficult conversations, there's like an internal thing you got to sort of work on. There's the external reality to that. There's the context. There's all these things that you need to sort of kind of work through. So it's certainly worth the investment in coaching and training, to get those things right. And they can make huge, huge differences. But again, you need the humility and that commitment for folks to be able to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gordon, we're getting to the end of our conversation, but I do want to lead us into podcasting. You started the Executive Wins podcast, in 2024, you started it?
2025 was the launch. January 20th was the launch for that one. Wow. It's been such a joy because it's there for what I do is, and this is what we did in our interview, but the intention is to get experienced leaders to share their biggest wins. They pick one, and then we go through a structured conversation to unpack that win. It takes about 30, 35 minutes for the interview. And by the time we get through that, we meet people like Alvin Pike, who, the biggest loan he ever got was a $300,000 mortgage, and somewhere fell in love with buying a screw piling business, and he raised $25 million.
Wow.
And bought a screw piling business and got that from 10 million in revenue to 50 million in revenue in 3 years.
Wow.
Or you meet Kelly Mottet, who's Chief Operating Officer at Mach 32, 4 people on her little medical device development team. I'll say this badly, but they've got an EpiPen they can jab into an open wound and stop the bleeding.
Wow.
That U.S. military might be interested in. She's gotten through what they call the BARDA step, getting to FDA approval in the United States. Karen Unland at Taproot Publishing, a local Edmonton phenom. Karen does a wellness check-in at the beginning of every meeting so that she's able to create the vulnerability and trust to attract and retain the best remote talent. The joy that I have in doing the podcast is I sound pretty cool when I say that very quickly, but I get to spend a pre-interview with these people. I get to spend the interview time with these people. I can form wonderful connections with them to spread their story. These are fantastic stories. And the whole goal, back to what is my mandate, is to get those leaders on sharing their stories so that someone else can listen. And then they can take that away and immediately apply what they've learned, whether it's in attitude, improving people, making better profits, whatever they are. And so it's just been so nice to be able to have such a wide variety of really strong people on with that focus on the one win. And I appreciate the longer sort of podcast, but this one's been nice to have a specific format, and we'll see how the people like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed my time on it, and I'm really excited to hear it. So you got to keep me posted when it's coming live. If you're hearing this now, though, it is 100% live, and you can definitely go and find it after this show. But Gordon, I want to chat with you about the launch of the podcast. Because I'll tell you what, man, I get questions all the time. Kelly, how do I launch a podcast? I love your show. I want to do something like it. I have an expertise in something, but I'm afraid to do it. I'm afraid to get started. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know about you. You actually had an experience in radio. I had zip. I had nothing. I just knew that I loved podcasts. And so I launched this show in February of 2023. My equipment, Gord, sat in the corner of my room for a full month before my fiance really just put me on the spot and was like, Kelly, either sell that or do something with it. We either need the money or we need the show. Figure it out. And I went downstairs, recorded the trailer episode, and the rest is history. But dude, I had to learn everything. So I completely understand what these people are saying and the fear they have. I didn't understand audio editing. I didn't understand how to record a good show or show planning or anything. I just knew I had an expertise in business development and I could share that with the world if I just went for it. That was enough for me. Episode 3 was almost the end. I almost quit. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Who even cares? And I love to talk to other podcasters, and I actually don't talk to a lot of other podcasters. So it's nice having you on, and I would love to understand your journey and your experience, because I think there's a lot of people who could make huge impacts if they're just willing to take the leap.
I agree, and congratulations on what you did, because there's that moment exactly, like, I don't know, when things go wrong, like what are you doing that people can't see? There's that element of what that is. And you've got, if you're into your hundreds of episodes, that's incredible dedication to making it work. And obviously it's had an impact on your work because the value has proven itself out. I did another podcast called the Meeting Leadership Podcast. I produced 156 episodes back probably 6 or 8 years ago. And that was a good experience. But I was trying to go, the dilemma I got into there was not being focused. And it struck me that I didn't really feel that I had a theme for what I was doing in that one. Met lots of great people. It was a really good experience. And again, like you said, I have the production background to sort of step into what's happening. Starting in 2025, I wish it was like this. We're on Riverside right now. Just go get Riverside.
Yeah.
And then go listen to the Riverside tutorials. And you'll have a pod between, I use Buzzsprout and Riverside. So the thing with, I used to have to send the podcast for editing, audio editing, to clean things up. The AI can take care of that now. The transcripts, the show notes, all those things that I used to have an assistant to do.
Yeah.
That stuff is all sort of there for the taking. But I would say more than anything, there has to be kind of a purpose and a focus to why you want to do it.
Yes.
Because if it's too random, you simply won't get an audience for what you're listening for. So having that kind of worked out. And what I did, I know before I started, was I just tested. I've spent a lot of time coming to the Executive Wins brand. And that was because I used to have that, the complicated parts of our conversation today, I used to start there. And it was a horrible place to start. Whereas now when I meet people, I'm just like, hey, can you tell me about your biggest win?
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful, it doesn't matter if I'm talking to somebody for 5 minutes or 5 hours it's just a fantastic place to start. But it took me forever to come down to, again, that eloquent kind of first moment. So what I would say is I would be encouraging to anybody that, is thinking about starting a podcast to do it. And there's no barrier to equipment at all. Like you don't, whatever, you can get it's a couple $100 for a mic and an editing program and you're off to the races in terms of what that looks like. So have that little budget to go, but pick a focus so that you're going to be able to get some traction with what it looks like. Yeah. For example, you've made a massive impact on the local business area. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got a geographical footprint that allows that to be there. For me, it's senior leaders and wins. That becomes a way that's quickly memorable. And, that sort of allows me to have a place to play. And of course, if you go to Apple Podcasts, you would see what that is. But I would try it out. I would try out the podcast format or whatever you're thinking about doing in simply some networking conversations. Yeah. Go to an event and just try it on, see what it looks like, and start to get feedback on what that looks like. And this time around, I actually asked people, what length of podcast would you like to listen to? Do you listen? Do you want it on YouTube? That led me to do both, as opposed to just doing audio. I'd done just audio before, so I did both. And then you get into you can go into other levels of complexity that I didn't know I was going to get into. I have a teleprompter now, a little news studio in here. Like it's kind of silly. And then, people don't see you failing for an entire Saturday because you can't get the teleprompter speed right and all that kind of stuff, making it look natural. So I would be encouraging to anybody, but start with that thing of like, why am I doing it? Who's going to listen? And why do I want to be connected with them? And I think it really can be a platform to meet the people you want to meet.
Yeah.
So I've met some really outstanding people that I just simply wouldn't have met without this ability to say, oh, I've got this podcast, but I'd love to meet you for the quality and interesting things that you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's just been very easy then. Then I don't need to, I'm not trying to sell anything. It's just like, no, if you want to share your information, you want people to learn from it, then we're in good shape. So that, I would say that pre-work of like knowing what I wanted from it and why has been easy. The technical parts, I hope nobody is intimidated by it, because it's just a day and age where that's not the hard part to kind of get it up and running. And again, all those tools are there for the taking.
Absolutely. And I would say that even if you're not using AI tools, the production tools that are available to you now are fairly easy to use.
That's right.
I struggled a little bit learning Adobe Audition only because I didn't start with Adobe Audition. So my recommendation to anybody starting a podcast, if you are going to self-edit your show, just start on Adobe Audition. It'll save you leaps and bounds of headache down the line. I switched at like episode 95. I switched. So I'd already produced a whole bunch of shows on Hindenburg and had to learn a whole new program for the production.
Oh, good for you for your persistence. And I think, again, what's funny is I'm doing the whole thing through Riverside, and it's because I gave up perfectionism a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And it's not that I don't want to, and I've used Adobe Audition a few editions ago, and it's not that I don't want to get in there. It really is an expedited time versus quality thing. And so people are like, oh, you've got a sync issue or you've got this. I'm like, listen, I'm getting this thing out the door. Mm-hmm. And the people that are listening are, and the feedback that I'm getting is really strong. And so I'm just going with that. And I might be on episode 95 and then I'll make that sort of perfect change. But perfect to me would have been a barrier to getting it out the door. And I'm just stunned again at something like Riverside. The other thing I would say for people is they need a little budget. They need some amount of money. I'm going to call it $1,000. But they've got to be ready with that. And that thing where you're on Fiverr and you're like, I can get that editor for $5 or that editor for $7.50. It's like, no, stop. Like you just got to be able to move quickly through whatever these things are to get going, whether you're getting like a logo produced or whatever. But that $1,000, I'd just be ready to, you got to buy a mic. You got to maybe buy a light. And you got to kind of get those basic investments done. And then, like you said, you're off to the races and you can get going. Or if you don't even want to do that, just get that. I've seen some speakers who are doing very well, and they just get the iPhone out and turn it around and hold it at arm's length and just start.
Massive.
That can be one of those ones too, where and then you overcome whatever your interview fears or those things.
And a lot of phones these days have like a noise cancellation and like an audio upscaling feature that's pretty incredible. I had a person reach out the other day and was like, yeah, I'm just doing this on my phone. I was like, dude, that sounds like you're in a studio. Like that's really well done.
It's funny having gone through, and I could take you all the way back to my 8mm film project in university. And I'm sad I should have been born 20 years earlier or 20 years later. But the gear these days is just shocking, like in terms of how good it can be. I still think there's value. It's funny about the AI and how far to take it, because apparently that you can get AI just to do your podcast now, which I would never recommend because I don't get to meet Kelly then in terms of how that goes. The other thing that's super crazy is I took transcripts from a podcast recently. And because I've got this 5-part format, I gave a prompt to ChatGPT. I took the transcripts, I put it in there.
Yeah.
And it spat out these sort of 1.5-page, perfect, like hockey cards of information.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? Something that would have taken me forever to summarize and get into good shape. I'm like, pull out the inspirational quotes. Well, now I don't need to go to Brainy Quotes anymore because all I need to go is a podcast guest, but I don't need to even search through the transcript. It got pulled out. And I've got these quotes that are outstanding. So that when I'm going to do social media promotion, I'm like, it's already there. So these the tools are there to become really high quality very, very quickly. So then it's still back to that idea of like, do I have an idea? And with the people that I'm going to get on, do they want to hear it? And what's the point? So I really would spend, again, that upfront time there.
I appreciate that, Gordon, because I think there's a lot of people listening right now who they feel overwhelmed when they look at it and they're like, oh, I have to create the social media. I have to do all of our show notes. I have to record and produce a show, right? Like, yes, it's a lot, but there's a lot of great tools as well available to help you, and they're getting better all the time. So you absolutely nailed it.
Well, and on the advisor side, there's that thing in there of like, it is basically for me, it's, well, because I have help in the background, so that maybe is unfair, but it's going to be a half a day to a day a week of your time. And if that sort of gets you where you want to go, that's the commitment. That is the commitment level. You're not going to get it done in just a couple hours, just as things happen. So
yeah. Like I find my production has gotten longer only because my pickiness in the show quality that I want to put out has gone through the roof. Like, I find that like my show planning is longer now. My recordings are longer. My editing time is longer, but the show production is better than ever. So there is a trade-off. There's going to come a point where it's like, okay, I think I'm going to put in the time to get this, like, to get the sound and the quality.
Well, and you know what, you produce regularly. So like when I had a cold and I'm like, oh, this episode's going to last forever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I've got a cold. Like I got to get this thing out the door. So I was like, yeah, that one, I sound like I have a cold. So
it is what it is. I do it all. Like Buckley's is my best friend. I haven't missed an episode in, at this point, 300 episodes. We're still trucking along. So yeah, man, like it really comes down to, it's okay. Like people will forgive you, but the algorithm won't. So you need to make sure that you're consistently doing your posting.
Wow. Well, and what are the highlights of the rewards that you've gotten? I mean, you're doing it. So how has it paid you back?
You know what? You named a few of them today. You named the community you build, right? Me and you know each other now. If I need help with corporate stuff, I now know you. You mentioned earlier, who do you talk to? Honestly, I talked to Colin Harms. I talked to Vijay Swaminathan. I talked to Brian Hayes. I talked to all the people that I've done this show with. And a lot of them have become really, really great friends. Carmen LaBelle is another one. There's just so many incredible individuals that I've gotten to meet on this journey who I can now call like a friend. I could call them for help. And it's amazing that it's hundreds of people now, like it's pretty incredible, the community. There has obviously been contracts and work that has come through. Coaching has come through as an option I never saw. I never planned to be a coach, but it definitely presented itself after about 100 episodes of this show. And I didn't see it coming, but when it did come and I said yes to it, it was like, wow, I could have been doing this the whole time. This is amazing.
And it's funny because people are like daunted by the time, but in fact, 100 episodes, 100 day, like you start to add that up.
Yeah.
But the cost benefit, because you've done it like your business development work consistently over time, going deeper in relationships, you've demonstrated. So when those people are hesitating to kind of do that, are you going to do a live, get all the guests together in one place at one time?
That would be really cool. I don't know. We'll see. We're doing
I just say it because it's in I'm doing it now with micro groups from the podcast. Yeah. So I pull together 2 or 3s. I would go. I'll buy the ticket right now. Like you just pick the venue.
Yeah.
And you charge me $25, $100 or whatever. I'll be there. I would just sort of say you've got that opportunity, I think, with this group. And it's funny for me, I just was batting this around of like, do you get just the group together or you invite other people? I think there's something about the guests where they have a continuity of being on the show.
They all have something in common. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so then that thing, I think, anyway, I just, there's something about moving it into the real world that I think would be great. And you'd be there. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. Please do host a panel. Take 2 or 3 of the guests, put them up front for a little 15-minute thing, and then hyper encourage them to go and share the stories they shared with you because they already know what to talk about. And then they would, I just can't be encouraging enough about that because I think you've earned that right to have those few hundred people at one place at one time.
That would be super fun. I hope we get to do that. 100%. I want to do that now. No, we are trial running a live show at the moment every Wednesday on LinkedIn. I don't know how long it's going to go. I'm not sure. Like with 4 people, anything could happen, but we're ultimately trying it. And so right now, at this point, it's February 21st, 2025. At this point, we've been doing a live show. We've done 3 episodes to date. Our 4th episode is next week. And it's just, we're hopping on for an hour. We're doing a live conversation. Each one of us brings a topic and we don't know what it is. So it's like a surprise to each one of us. And we just talk for like 40 minutes on it. It's been a lot of fun. And I would say maybe to you, I would encourage you to try something like that as well, doing the live on LinkedIn's. The last one, episode 3, we had over 100 people watching, which was pretty incredible for a 3rd show. So might be worth trying on your front.
And again, you've built the base, right? You've earned the relationships through what you're doing. You're genuine, right? You can hear that you want the best for the people that you come in contact with. That's been very, very clear. So congratulations. That sounds really well earned.
Thank you, Gordon. I appreciate it. For all of the listeners listening today who might have found what you were talking about with regards to executive wins really valuable, and maybe they're struggling, maybe they're having organizational challenges, maybe they're not hitting their growth goal, maybe they haven't set their mission and vision and they're just making money and they don't know where to go next and they need that support. Give us a quick rundown on executive wins and let them know the best way to get a hold of you.
Executivewins.com. That's the simplest way to sort of think about it. And from there, the site's got everything that you kind of need to learn about the coaching, facilitation, and business advisory resources that are there. If we're talking about coaching, it typically starts with a free 1 hour intake. Are we a fit? Is there something there? Facilitation, I've been in every room setting. So there's not sort of an innovative strategic or conflict management scenario that I've been in. So if you need somebody, again, very experienced, having been in, with the Canadian military in a high sensitive room, I can't talk about that kind of, it's just been crazy that way in terms of the levels that it's been. So there's that. And then on the business advisory side, there's that joy of having that underneath engine, foundational engine around having the executive planning system. So it's not that I'm going willy-nilly and one thing at a time. It really is saying I've got this checklist underneath there. If you want to go that far to bulletproof your entire organization, that's there as well. So the website, executivewins.com, get going there. Check out the podcast, the Executive Wins podcast. I think there's something there for anybody that wants to up their leadership level. And if they're going to hear, again, like we're hearing today, we're hearing great tone, great suggestions, and again, lived experience. Some of those experiences that are just absolutely unique and really stories worth sharing. So that's another good place too.
Amazing. And you are active on LinkedIn. So go check out Gordon Sheppard on LinkedIn. Give him a follow. He's got great information coming out weekly. Gordon, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for your time.
Until next time, you've been listening to the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.